Hi everybody, Jessie here from jessiebanks.com and welcome to the Save the Crafty YouTuber Video Hop. It's a celebration of card making video tutorials created by a group of talented crafters of all different levels and styles. We're coming together over 5 days to give our viewers a chance to discover other amazing card makers and help reach monetization goals. All you have to do is watch, like the video, consider subscribing, and click the link in the video description below to hop to the next video. Let yourself be inspired. Don't forget to comment because we have tons of prizes to give away. Please indicate if you're located in the USA or international so prizes can be awarded appropriately. Some prizes, definitely not all of them, do have some restrictions on them. Don't forget to check back every day this week as there are 5 themed days of the Video Hop, and you never know when you're going to discover your next favorite YouTuber. So what I have for you guys is a bunch of watercolor backgrounds and things. I am showing you some greeting farm images that I've colored in the past that are just kind of sitting around that need to get put on cards. Lots of these are retired or digital and stuff of that nature. I'm definitely not using them all, but we're hopping through them. The giveaway on my channel is going to be a $50 gift card to the Greeting Farm. Super excited to be able to give this away to you guys. Comments are going to be closed on November 7th and the winner will be announced on the 10th. So let's get into it. I'm starting off here with some handmade paints. These are from Stone Ground Paint. I will have the link to them in the description box below. They're kind of local to me. They're from a city about 2 hours away, and I pick up a half pan or two every time I'm in the city. So I started off with some Arches rough paper here, and I taped them both down onto this is just a cutting board I picked up at the dollar store, and I'm starting by wetting one. This is going to be a simple gradient. We're going to do the one on the left-hand side is going to be a single color gradient, and the one on the right-hand side is going to be 2 colors. So I started off there by wetting that entire paper, and I kind of let it dry a little bit so the paper's still wet, but nothing's puddling on it. I want that water to be able to flow a little bit, but I don't want it to be super sopping wet and crazy shiny, but the paper's definitely not dry. Remember, when you're working in watercolors, regardless of what brand or anything of that nature, as long as that paper is wet, your watercolor's moving. So until that paper is warm and dry, like room temperature, and doesn't feel cool or anything of that nature, it's still wet and those paints are still moving. I do prefer to let all of my paints dry completely in between all of my layers, of course, and I do let them dry naturally. So I don't really hit them with a heat gun or anything of that nature. I kind of like just to let that natural flow in the paper and them do their own thing. So I'm using a teal color here on the one on the right, and I used Rose of Ultramarine from them on the left. Their Rose of Ultramarine is not like Daniel Smith's, if you're very familiar with them. This is a single pigment color. I really enjoyed it. It's like a soft purple, and you can only build it up so deep. It doesn't get real deep and dark, but I do think it's super pretty. So you can see as we're going down the page, I'm just adding more water to my puddles and then blending them out. And then we're going to come back in with our second layer here. And instead of wetting my paper ahead this time, I'm just wetting it as I go. So it's dry and I'm just adding more water to my puddle of the color there off to the side and slowly blending that out and letting it fade out. We're going to do the same thing here again on the teal, and then I'm going to flip the board upside down and we'll continue adding more layers on that single gradient one and add the second color in the other one. I figured since I was putting another coat on the other one, I'll just keep building it up on the first one. So taking your time and giving yourself the opportunity to make these slow layers on it is going to allow your color to gradate very, very smoothly and transition very, very naturally from the darker saturation of the color all the way up to that lightest, almost white type color. This next color that I'm adding on top of here is Stone Ground's Quinacridone Pink, Quinacridone Rose, Magenta, Quinacridone Magenta. See, it came to me. I don't have it beside me, so I had to think of it. Anyway, so I'm starting again, the same thing as on the last one with the darker pigment at the top, and then I'm fading it out. And I am going to pull that all the way to the bottom of the page because as I get down to the bottom here, there's almost no pigment on it, and I want that to kind of blend over top because they are gradating into each other. So I really like the way that all comes together. And again, like I said, we're just going to keep adding that color onto that Rose of Ultramarine one just to slowly build it up and see how dark I can get that color because I've never actually attempted it before and I figured this was the perfect opportunity. So we're going to finish that one up, let it dry, and put on one more coat. This definitely takes some patience. Set it off to the side, let it dry, work on other things. While I was doing this, I was filming other sections for this video, but a lot of the time I'll do this and put it away and then do all my Copic coloring and things of that nature. I do find that giving it that time to naturally dry, also as well as using a good quality paper. I use 99% of the time, unless I know it's just for swatching and stuff, I use cotton paper. it's made for watercolor. I find it the best for watercolor as opposed to a cellulose paper, which is a pulp-based or a wood-based paper. I know it's not cheap, but the investment makes a big difference in the final outcome of it. And you'll see throughout this video that I use a bunch of different kinds of watercolors and I use different kinds of paper, but all of those papers are 100% cotton paper. Personal preference. I find the greater investment in the paper for the little pieces I use, especially my cards. It goes a long way. So now that we got those all done, once they're dry, I'm going to remove them here from the board. And you can see how I kind of tried to get that frame around all the paper to be basically the same, or as close as I can, just by eyeballing it with that blue painter's tape. They work out perfect. I don't trim them down or anything. These are already cut to 4 by 5 1/4, so it's 1/4 of an inch smaller than my card base that we are going to pop them onto shortly here. So we'll get them all removed. They're all nice and dry already. And then I'm going to pull out the couple images we have here. These are both from retired sets. They do come back once in a while. These are those big kits that the Greeting Farm sells. One's from Hatters, and I think the other one's called, I can't remember what it's called, but it's got little prints, or little like fairy-esque feeling ones on there. Sentiments coming from this Bloom kit, and that's what I used. I stamped this on now with some black ink, and then I'm using... Okay, because I popped these on ahead, sorry. I popped these on ahead. I didn't stamp these first, and then I realized that I popped up all of my images, so I'm pulling out my old stamp positioner. And we're going to go old school on this one. So I'm stamping it first onto there because it's a rubber stamp and I can't see through it to make sure that it's clear. This is the MFT Extreme Black ink. And now we're going to pop it on here and use that to position it, pull it off, and stamp down right in that spot. And that'll put that sentiment right where I want it to be. Because this is rough paper, it doesn't stamp super clear, and I am going to come back in with a black marker and trace over top of that sentiment on both of these just to get it nice and black the way I want it to be for the images so that it's easy to read and it's really bold, right? The way you want a sentiment to be. I knew that before I stamped it, that that's the way it was going to be, especially on rough papers. So again, inking up our stamp and stamping it down, tucking that block right into that corner. Stamp's perfect. Love it. Now this is the black pen I'm going to come in and trace both those sentiments with. I'm not going to make you sit and watch this because it does take some time and some patience, but I enjoy it. So now that those are both on, we're going to glue them onto these top folding card bases. I already have the adhesive on the back of them. And that's our first 2 cards, guys. We got 4 cards for you in this one. Again, all focusing on the background, not the coloring. If you are interested in Copic and colored pencil coloring, if you do subscribe to my channel, there'll be more coming in the future, and there's also tons of them in past videos you can find. So here's our finished cards, and then we're going to jump into the next one. This one I am pulling out Jane Davenport's. This is her Brights palette. I've had this forever, and I've really only swatched it and never used it a whole lot, so I figured this was the perfect opportunity. I know lots of people have this very set or some of the Prima sets in their stash, and they're great watercolors. I had a blast playing with them. This is a small mop brush, and I'm just going to use this to throw a bunch of water randomly all over this piece of watercolor paper. I'm going to move the light here right away so you guys can see a little bit of the shine of how the watercolor or the water sitting on the paper here isn't perfect. It isn't covering the entire thing. It's just kind of slopped over that one side just to make sure that it stays nice and wet. Now I'm going to pull off some of this pink color. I can't remember what they're called. She doesn't use like proper names or anything, but I'm using this pinky red and then this yellow, which I do believe is Bumblebee if I remember correctly for the yellow. The other one I have no idea. So pulling off a bunch of pigment here, and then we're going to go in and I'm just going to splash it around. It's going to be really, really saturated and heavy pigmented. But that's good because I'm going to lift a bunch of it off once it starts to dry. But we'll get that all splashed on in a couple spots here. I did use, this is one of my more expensive brushes. This is a Kolinsky Sable brush. I love it. It's beautiful. But I did find with the amount of water I was using and how liquidy I had the paint and how much of it I was putting on the brush, when I got to the pink, I was kind of splotting it all over. So that led me to adding paint splots at the end. But that's all right. It worked out. I think it's really pretty. So let's make sure we get this nice and saturated. Once I get this all on, I decided to kind of try and blend it into the yellow a little more because it was feathering, like the pink pigment, as you can see here, is feathering into the yellow. So I kind of tried to blend it a little bit, with left me with an orange color, which I wasn't really happy with. So that's where it led to the bleeding off, or the blotting off. But it's just something to play with, and you can see how I'm kind of trying to fix it, and then I'm making an ugly orange that I'm not happy with, and it's just not good. But that's okay. You work with what you got, and you just go, and it'll eventually look nice. So I started to dry it here, and then I started to dab up just some of the orange, and then I was going to lay more yellow on it. I'm like, you know what? Kind of like the way that looks. Let's start drying it and slowly dabbing it up as we go, which will let it lift differently in the different spots. You can see how it's almost bleached out and really, really light in some areas and more saturated in the others. That's exactly what I was after once I decided I liked that. I forgot to record dabbing on all of the yellow paint there, but I did record me wiping it off, which is kind of silly, and I can't believe I did that, but that's all right. I just took a whole bunch of the paint on the brush and splattered it all over. Now I'm drying it just a hair, finishing it up, drying after I blotted off what was extra, and now we're going to do the same thing with the pink. So you're going to get to see it anyway. So I'm loading up the brush nice and heavy, and then I'm just splattering it all over the place. And it looks kind of like a disaster right now because it's so dark compared to the rest, but I'm going to wipe it up, take our heat tool here, and start drying it just a little bit, just to make sure that it's dry around the edges and we're not going to pick up too much of the color. I do want to be able to see those pink splots all over the paper here. And now we're going to start splotting or drying them up just with my rag. I use rags instead of paper towel. I throw them through the wash when they get really, really dirty. So now I'm just pulling out this thank you sentiment out of the nurse stamp set here that the Greeting Farm has. And I'm going to ink that up in Versamark, and we're going to emboss it with white embossing powder. Then we're going to watercolor it as well. So I'm getting that stamped out and get it all embossed here. This is Hero Arts white embossing powder. I love this embossing powder. I use it all the time. It lasts forever. I've never emptied a thing of embossing powder ever. Although I don't use it a whole ton either, but you know. So once we get that embossed here, heating it up, now I'm just going to hit it with the heat tool until it turns shiny. Going to make sure that I don't overcook the embossing. As soon as it's shiny, it's done, and I'm done. Then I'm going to tape it down beside here, as you can see, and I pull back out those Jane Davenport, and this is the dark color. It's like the inky color. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to put one layer just over top of that, splashed on. Make sure I paint enough of it that I can cut the piece I'm going to want out of it. I'm just going to make like a flag on my own. Once that dries, I come back in and give it one more coat, and then we're going to muck it up. You guys are going to watch me mess this whole thing up. And then I think I forgot to record me fixing it, but I can tell you what I did. It was super easy. So once that's dry, I brought this in and I was trying to clean up the paint that stuck to, but I got my rag too wet. See how it kind of bleached it out? And then I tried to do it all over and I didn't like the way it looked. So then I just took a wet brush and ran it over top just to blend it out properly. Blend it out a little bit more cohesively, I should say, and dried it again. And this is what I came up with, which was all right. So once we pull this off of our board here, we're going to put our card together. This is my favorite part. I love making these watercolor backgrounds, from the gradients to the splashes to the stripes, all of that. It was really fun to put this video together for you guys. So we're going to adhere that down to our top folding card base, pop our little girl up here on some craft foam, and then I'm going to cut a little flag out of this. So I'm going to start by cutting out just the stripe with the sentiment on it. And then I'm going to take scissors and cut the flag out of it there on the left-hand side so that I can bump it up straight with our tape line on the right end of our watercolor piece. So I'm just going to create a small flag here with my scissors. I start by snipping it middle-ish, and then I cut it back to it, and it looks good. It doesn't need to be perfect. I didn't need to muck with it. So I'm using my Tombow Mono Multi adhesive here to glue this down onto our watercolor panel. I do like using liquid glue underneath any sort of tape and stuff when I'm adhering things onto watercolor paper, especially watercolor paper like this. This is Arch's cold press watercolor paper, or the rough that we used last time. And here's our finished card again. And we got one more for you guys. This one was super fun. This is Saunders Waterford 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. I have some Pinkfresh Studios liquid watercolors here. I don't use that clementine color. I did pull it out, but I didn't have enough room for it with the brush that I was using. I used a 3/4 inch flat brush. This is what I'm going to mix those paints up with. That's just it's a ceramic plate that I bought at Dollarama for like $3. I use it all the time. It's fantastic. marking the center of our paper here. This paper is 5 3/4 inches long. So I found the center because I couldn't math, obviously, as you see me counting it out slowly to figure out whereabouts it is. And then and I put a mark on it, and I'm trying to erase it, and I couldn't erase it. I don't know what was on that ruler. Probably permanent marker, knowing me. So we're going to start off with our center color. So I'm going to start by putting down our green here, which is, I think it's called Limeade or something like that. I'm going to put a few drops of that down and then water it out with our water and just put a stripe straight across the middle of that. I'm not making sure that the stripe is perfectly square by drawing all of that out. Not making sure that the spaces in between our colors are perfectly dry. I'm just taking this 3/4 inch flat brush and making a line right across the middle of that paper, as straight as I can with my eyeball. Then we clean that up and I put some of the sunshine down, which will go above the green. Again, add a bunch of water to it and get it all mixed up so that I can make a space-ish, roughly 1/4 inch, give or take a little bit, and pull that one right across as well. Then we move on to this aquamarine color, which was actually more green than I thought it was going to be. And then I put it on the paper and it wasn't as green as it looked on the plate, which I thought was really odd, but it's a beautiful color, so I'm not complaining. That one put on, and then we have pink and purple as well here. That's why I left the orange out. You can see how I ran out of space for it. So I went with pink as opposed to orange. So squeeze out a little bit of our pink, water it down, and add that one to the top. These are super fun. I love doing these real simple backgrounds with my paints, and then adding just a little image on top of it with a sentiment. I think they're super fun and they always look absolutely adorable. Now our purple stripe for the bottom, you can see how I don't even have to wait for the colors to dry. They're still damp on the paper. You can see how they're shiny, so you know they're not dry, and I think it worked out absolutely perfect. So we're going to add our purple stripe. I decided that didn't look as pigmented as the rest, so I add a little bit more paint to it and mix it in and give it one more pass across, and that saturated it just a little bit more so it seemed to fit in with everything else. So when that one all dry, I pulled it off, and now I'm going to cut it down to, I wasn't sure at the start if I was going to go like 5 1/8, and then I measured the second, realized that I didn't measure the first one to be able to make it that big. So I made it 1/4 inch smaller, so this panel is 3 3/4 by 5, and then we're going to adhere it onto a piece of yellow cardstock, which is 5 1/4 by 4, so that it gives me that border around it. And then I have this little sweet little guy from the greeting farm. It came out of a dog set. The sentiment I'm using comes out of the kitty set, and it says thanks for always lending a paw. So we're gonna stamp this one down again using our MFT Extreme Black ink onto that aquamarine little stripe down there, and then we're gonna pop our girl up on some foam tape. Put that onto another top folding card, and that'll be it for this one as well. So again, if you guys are interested in getting that gift certificate, definitely leave a comment down below. I would love it if you subscribe to my channel and checked out some more of my videos and see what I have coming. And I will see you guys very soon in another one. Have a great day and enjoy the hop. Bye for now.